I'm Rory Greener from XR Today, bringing you the latest news and conversation from the extended reality space. Welcome to the February 2024 edition of the Big XR News Show. Today, we are joined by Jay Latter, the founder of The Fusionists, Kevin O'Donovan, co-chair of the VARA's Industrial Metaverse and Digital Twin Committee, and Lashita Bahom, the director of Virtual Switzerland. And of course, Rob Scott, the publisher of XR Today. Now, this week's going to be huge, and this month's going to be potentially massive as a mainstream month for XR. It's really setting up the year ahead. Rob, could you perhaps kick us off and explain to us and introduce to us why this week and February ahead could be a massive shift for the industry?
Yeah, well, I suppose it is the big news show, Rory, and we've kicked off the year with some big news, with the Apple Vision Pro hitting the marketplace. And I think there's a lot of conversation around that at the moment. And really just this week, we've seen Microsoft release Microsoft 365 apps into the Vision Pro, and Zoom also did the same with their apps. So it's really interesting to see where the Vision Pro is heading potentially, but equally keen to hear everyone's thoughts on that. What do you think, Rory?
Well, yeah, it's obviously a very big moment compared to, say, Meta or Microsoft being quite niche companies. Apple has got a almost cult-like reach. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what that reach can do for the industry, the trickle-down of interest, investment, and positive optics. This time last year, I sound like a broken record because I always bring it up, but there was, I like to call the metaverse crash, where we had a big influx of interest, and then perhaps that died out due to marketing, due to various factors, adoption issues, stuff like this. But I think with the Apple Vision Pro, with its spatial computing approach, and many other factors, this could be the device, or it could be the moment to once again push XR into the mainstream, but perhaps with a bit more poise and a little bit more of a stronger foundation than promises that came years previous, alongside their remarketing into spatial computing and the integrated apps, etc., etc. Obviously, the pre-order is coming out tomorrow of time of recording for US customers only. So we have seen the pre-orders sell out. Those might be enthusiasts, and we are still waiting really to see what the wider market thinks, which we'll probably see when international orders start coming in. I assume that will be announced, or when that will be available will be announced at WWDC later this year. But in terms of enterprise, Kevin, I wasn't sure if you wanted to start off by telling us a little bit more about the Vision Pro and perhaps how spatial computing can affect things like the industrial metaverse, the use of digital twins, because that real-time 3D collaboration and interaction, I think, is the key element behind the Vision Pro's success, in terms of entertainment and enterprise, really.
No, I agreed, and I'll give Apple great credit for, they've brought this whole topic back into the public perception, right, in a way that many other companies couldn't, right, regardless of how good their tech was or whatever. So I think it's fascinating. In my world, the amount of people in industry and manufacturing in oil and gas that may not have ordered one because they're not in the US, but they all want to try it. Now, I could walk up to them with a VR headset and I could hand it to them and they go, I'll do it later. Whereas this has piqued the interest. So I think it'll be fascinating. I don't know how many Vision Pro unboxing demo videos we're going to see in the next 48 hours, but there's probably going to be a lot. My hope is that most people will go, God, this is really cool. The danger is that people go, I thought it'd be better, and then we have a trough of disillusionment. I hope that won't happen. But certainly in terms of just raising the awareness in the general public, I think it's brilliant. Now, I was over at CES, and to be quite honest, in the enterprise space, there's a good bubbling all along the way, not just with Vision Pro, but all sorts of other technologies, and digital twins obviously being the pillar, but then how do I interact with them? And we'll cover more of that. So I'm hoping this will be very successful and open up the art of the possible to people who go, God, I didn't realize you could display things like that. Imagine if we can do this and this in our work. I'm quite optimistic because they're normally, it's not going to be perfect, but Apple are normally decent when they bring out a new product, right?
The thing is, Apple sets a benchmark. I mean, before the iPhone, we had smartphones. There were PDAs and so on. The thing with Apple is they make technology easier to use. It doesn't matter if the people like it, if it's overpriced, it doesn't matter. Simply the benchmark that it's easier to access, that the usage of this technology might be more open to non-experts. And this is, for example, something that is, especially in the business context, needed. Right now, you have experts running this stuff. You have experts using this stuff. So with Apple, okay, have I been stuck? Have you heard me still? It will be uploaded afterwards. So what Apple makes is simply that more people without expert knowledge are able to use these things. So I'm quite positive. The first reviews that I've heard about the quality of the displays, about that they can wear it all the time. There was even one kind of journalist that used it for skiing without breaking the legs. And so, okay, fine, it's nice. If it works, it works.
Yeah, I would add to that that it's really opening a new field for schools, I would say, research institutions, because I'm part of a lot of research groups, and I guess hospitals, medical institutions, the entire also design and architectural space related disciplines may want to know, try it on, and it's gonna be cool, perhaps a bit cooler than the Quest 3, although the Quest 3 is already very, very good. It's great for what we're doing currently. So I guess it's not gonna be integrated in the industry per se, but more, again, the cool kids. As you see, you have like the nerds on Samsung or Android, and you have the cool kids on Apple. Who is a cool kid here?
I would even say that within the businesses, it might open up all the departments that right now are a bit out of it through this coolness factor. Not just training, the upper management that honestly normally doesn't give a damn. Now with such a device, it looks cool, it's a prestigious object, and it's not like what all the other engineers, what the underlings are using. So for PR, for marketing, for all of these cooler departments that have crap loads of money, it might be an entrance. Rob, I think you've wanted to start to talk about the price, right?
It's significant, isn't it? $3,500, and that's without a carry case at $200. It's a significant price tag versus the Quest that's $500 nowadays or whatever it is. But it's Meta have sold 20 million devices now. Apple have sold 200,000 in the first week. But is that sustainable? Is that price point right for the marketplace?
Look, the price point, how Letitia already said, the cool boys. I mean, come on. Apple was one of the first ones who sold a smartphone for over $1,000. And it goes up and up. And everyone else is following. So for quality, for high resolution, for high-end stuff, the people are always willing to pay. Plus, it has a pro in the name. It's not for the guys out on the street. It's really for professional designers. It's for these professional guys. When you look, for example, the Magic Leap, it's either not a cheap thing, right? The HoloLens, you need to have some kind of deep pockets to pay this. When you are looking into XR devices, VR headsets like the Xtal, for example, come on, for an 8K resolution thing, how much does it cost currently? 5,000, 6,000? So it has a price tag. If you go into cheaper, into the starting thing, but then you lack of resolution, for the Vision Pro, for example, it's stated that their hand tracking is a benchmark. Nothing is so good like their stuff. So Even what we need to see in the industry is to strip down these devices, that these devices can make it, that you do not need additional gloves, additional controllers, that you need a suit, and so on and so on. I mean, come on, if you have to dress up for half an hour, then to use your use case for 45 minutes, I will not do it.
I think it's also about streamlining it as well. You know, we don't want to have a solution doesn't take a longer amount of time than what's already established. It'd be something that should speed up operations, whatever they may be, unless it's a significant improvement. And talking about the price, Lashita, I don't know if you had thoughts on this, but it's still about introducing this technology to decision makers and managers. Do you think perhaps the price tag will make that conversation harder, or do you think because of the name, because of the marketing, it might be an easy sell despite the large price tag?
Were speaking to me, like I raised my hand because I wanted to say something also about the interoperability. I want to be able to know that whatever is being, as, for instance, as a producer, I would like to know that my creation can be seen on either or devices, and that's one of the key components. Because if you drop the money for that price, then it needs to bring something in return. So it's going to be really the return of investment that's going to draw the line. Not only the coolness of that object, but also the tech aspects and what you get out of it versus the meta,
If I may, I was back in Intel when the iPad came out, right? Now, the iPad at the time, we were going, it'll never work with this and what would that? No one will want it and blah, 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 right? Nice toy. Now, its price point was around the same as a good laptop at the time, right? And then suddenly a lot of the execs walked into the office with their iPad, handed it to the IT department and said, put that on the network. And they went, oh, I can't do that. And it was like, I don't care, do it. And to be quite honest, it got into the network and now you can device management and then same with the iPhone and whatever. So the price is, I think, a barrier for some companies. Look, the economy isn't great, and if it's the same price as a normal laptop, fine, but it's twice the price of a normal laptop. So maybe the top guys will get one, but they're not going to buy one for everyone in the office kind of thing. But I do think, hey, look, we've all been in the IT industry for so many years. Prices come down. That said, Jay, if you keep pushing the boundaries with better sensors, better. I think the integration will be key, especially in industry. I've got this CAD model. How easy is it to import? Is it a walled garden? Can I export stuff? We're going to figure all out that. And it's not going to be perfect out of the box. But I do think we're going to start seeing a lot more people in industry kind of going, we've used this for this team. This is different. We can do different things. So again, we'll see it play out. But hey, it's and Meta has sold 20 million. They sold 250,000 in November in Black Friday or something. And to Jay's point, if you're training someone in oil and gas instead of sending them to an offshore platform for a week and do it in VR, $4,000 is loose change, like.
Definitely. I think within that, talking about sales figures even, we got things like the Xreal reporting massive numbers of sales figures for their AR smart glasses. Granted, that's a consumer use case, but again, all this interest is trickling down to things like HTC Vive, as you say, Meta as well. Another really good example is the Magic Leap. They've recently entered a Chapter 3 stage of enterprise adoption. I think it's very clear that a lot of these XR device vendors, they're moving towards immersive productivity tools, perhaps leapfrogging off this current wave of interest. But Jay, perhaps you could kick us off by talking about Magic Leap. They're moving towards enterprise adoption. Do you think that there is a general move towards immersive productivity tools by these leading headset vendors? I feel personally, Magic Leap must have a second wave of life, really, following this new potentially mainstream moment. What do you think, Jay?
So Magic Leap has quite an interesting history. So they need to be very progressive. They need to go forward. I mean, Magic Leap nearly destroyed the XR market. People were thinking in the beginning that it's just vaporware, collecting so much money, not delivering. When it came out, it was just meh, and so on and so on. So they are having a hard time, several restructurizations, additional money had to come in, and so on and so on. In Europe, they are still not so present how they should be. It's still more or less the game of Microsoft. So the more you push your product towards enterprise, the more you cooperate with others to display the right showcases for your dedicated enterprise, the more successful you will be. How Kevin already mentioned, we have this kind of variety in the digital twin. Yada, 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 yada. The people need to use it. We are currently through this digital transformation in a very critical momentum when the companies started to understand the value of this experiencing my data, experiencing the spatial, plus through the pandemic, how it is to be somewhere else, working remotely, training remotely, doing stuff remotely. So Magic Leap here as one of the players has a very huge challenge ahead. There are several competitors that even through the pricing are a little bit better set than they, but it's a race. It's a race where with every announcement you will see simply pushing the boundaries and having these sales numbers. What is super important is what Letitia as well said, is this interoperability. It's multimodality. That you do not need to throw away your devices, that you can continue working there with them, even if you then buy several other devices from HTC, from whomever else. Magic Leap started to understand that these walled gardens are not their future. They are offering things. They are supporting local sandbox developments, but they are aware of it needs to work as well with other clients. So this was a very, very important lessons learned. Hopefully they can continue this way.
Yeah, and they've had some reliability issues. I've heard, from customers that, and so I hope that they have been able to tackle this challenge, because being mainly an enterprise solution, then you really need to have a reliable base. And HoloLens in that sense has taken, at least from what I see here in Switzerland, and also in Europe, they have taken a lead. So I don't know what their following base is. Perhaps you know guys better than me, but I think that the hype has calmed down, quite frankly, on our side.
Magic Leap is definitely beyond the hype. These times are over. Now they started to deliver reliable solutions. Of course, the numbers, if you compare it, HoloLens, Magic Leap, are significantly different. The Microsoft buddies, reliability can be challenging as well. I'm always very careful when I hear from the Microsoft guys, especially yesterday. Just it happened when the old joke from Windows times. Have you tried to turn it off and on again? More or less when it starts to make this with your Mac, because you had to install the Teams app and then it starts to reboot your laptop. It sucks. And I had something similar within the Microsoft ecosystem on the HoloLens, when it simply starts to boot up again.
Yeah, but if I may, guys, and in fairness, Magic Leap's been around 10 years? And HoloLens around the same. And if you look at where we are in terms of technology and look at the sensors, the compute that's now in the Quest 3, in the Vision Pro, in Varo, in whatever, no comparison. So I wish them well. Obviously, they got significant funding. But to Letitia's point, they have to deliver, right? It's enterprise. It's not just buy, fire and forget, right? And again, there was interoperability issues and whatever. But to be quite honest, 5 years ago, if you had a digital twin, you had your own digital twin. You couldn't share with anyone, right? They were all and even today that's getting better, but it's not perfect. But one quick one, Rory. I got to try on the Xreal glasses in at CES. Now I've tried various, let's say, virtual display ones before or whatever. So you plug this in, run a piece of software. It gives you virtual desktops. The clarity on it, I've never seen anything like this.
That's very interesting because it's so cheap in comparison to some of its competitors.
And like this is a plug and play, and like instead of having multiple monitors, I plug this in piece of software and I don't have to change my app. There's no SDK. Now they had pen screens, but for the price, so you said consumer, if I may, I think there's a big thing for this in offices, but we'll see.
Well, there is I don't interrupt you, but there is the Sightful AR laptop that was developed alongside the current brand of Xreal glasses. I think pre-orders or at least early access is open, so you can connect your Xreal to basically adjust the keyboard without a screen, and then have X number of devices. Letitia, what do you think about the Xreal glasses? Do you think they're going to kick off?
Oh, I haven't seen them yet. You know, like they haven't. Do not forget that Europe, and especially Switzerland, first there is Germany, and then there is the rest of Europe. And even if we have, we're tiny but mighty, it doesn't matter. We're like F on the market list. So, I'll tell you when it gets here, or when I get to see that. But yeah.
I think that's a whole another side of these devices, XR devices on a whole, is we're seeing them distributed and deployed in specific regions, but then you go to other regions without as good access to these devices, and they can cost a lot of money for something that's relatively cheap in, say, European or US markets. I think the MetaQuest 2 a few years ago was thousands of pounds in Brazil, and that just immediately creates an accessibility issue in its own right. So that's something that's probably going to improve as the technology gets larger. We are in a bubble where we got quite good access to this if we're in the XR industry too. But it's getting more mainstream, and perhaps these hurdles will become a little bit easier.
But that's a real problem. That's a real issue to penetration and integration in Europe as such. And this is why also the European community, and there is a big gathering at the very political level, of the European community staff involved in the virtual worlds and the Web 4.0, and they're gonna try to have this market penetration issue tackled so that we can finally have a sizable, share and development opportunity as well.
The adoption for these devices, Rory, that you've mentioned, for example, the headless laptop, the thing is we need new usability concepts. We need a completely different way. How do we use something without a mouse, without a display? This has to come as well. So therefore, all of these concepts, the one that starts to embed some new kind of user experience, it will then be copied by the other players. So this is the momentum that then needs to be catched simply to roll it out. For this comparison between Magic Leap and Microsoft. In general, Microsoft is a huge player. Each of the other named players, Microsoft can simply sit on them if they want. Because it's not just their HoloLens, it's the Office, it's the cloud service, it's all the thing. So Microsoft in fact is more like an IBM in business when they try to sell you consulting services, their own cloud, their bare metal plus Watson. So it's really, they have this unfair advantage that they sneak into the business with something and can immediately expand to everything. So players like Meta, like HTC, like all of these names in concerning HMDs have it a little bit harder to compete with this kind of player.
100%. I think a couple other factors that come into ubiquity is obviously device ubiquity, software ubiquity, and then also human behavior is another side of that too. we need to these headsets can't kick off if people don't know how to use them, and perhaps perhaps an avenue to help people understand and get familiar with the technology are some of the world's largest corporations taking on XR hardware and software. Recently, Disney Research brought out their Holotile. Quite an interesting case study, I think, because we've seen two XR types of accessories, kind of take storm a little bit recently. That being haptic gloves that went quiet for a little bit, and then there was a little bit more of a regain of interest in that recently, and now omnidirectional treadmills, two very niche products. Letitia, what do you think the influence is of a massive corporation like Disney chiming in with their own XR device? Obviously it's very centered on their attractions and theme parks, but I think the video got 500,000 views, and that's probably some of the most optics an omni treadmill device has ever gotten. So what's the influence there? Do you think it's going to affect this ubiquity positively?
Well, it's definitely meant for location based, and since the ex theme park lead of Disney is now a Dreamscape guy, I'm actually very curious to learn if they might integrate this new tile into upcoming experiences. Also, knowing that the well-being and medical therapeutic markets are the very large increase in numbers and in also content being fed to Meta and other devices. I think these holotiles, they come in quite timely, because we might use them, for instance, in rehab centers, in all these digital health centers that are popping up. Here in hospitals and institutions, we're using more and more, or even building new rooms dedicated to that type of rehab with MR and or some haptics. So it's very interesting, and not only for the entertainment sector. For me, it's really beyond, and for all the fitness at home and such. It's quite interesting, and I'm really curious about Dreamscape. I of course directly called my the president of Virtual Switzerland, who is the co-CTO of Dreamscape, and the technology is being made in Switzerland. And she didn't tell me much about it, she couldn't, but she was like, oh yeah, they've tried treadmills before. There have been a few haptics like that. And I'm like, give me more, give me some info, like we want to know. So yeah, it's probably gonna be quite a new fun base to deal with. But I'm on my end, I would rather look at the medical and well-being use for that.
I'm just going to jump in there with, the video, and we'll put a link in the description to the Disney Holotile video demo. It's pretty exceptional. The technology looked very, very innovative in terms of like how potentially, flat it was on the ground, flush to the ground, and maybe it didn't look too complex. It maybe didn't look like it was going to be, tens of thousands of pounds to deploy. So, I'm interested to hear from everyone here in terms of like the application of that technology. Do we see a space for that in the B2B world, or is it really the B2C kind of sector, retail, healthcare, place, fitness and things like that are likely to adopt that kind of technology?
So I've tried several of such devices. There is even on The Verge, I think, on VentureBeat, an article about me testing this out in Milton Keynes at the Transport System Catapult. Of course, not the Holotile, but it was the OmniDeck, 150,000, yada yada, whatever. A bit later, I've seen in the US at the Special Forces Training Center a group of 20 of these OmniDecks, and the people simply training any kind of combat situations. One of the biggest disadvantages here is, of course, it's just flat on the ground. It does not simulate that you climb a mountain. that would mainly be as well interesting for any kind of fitness, of any kind of healthcare stuff where you have to climb simply to do your kind of cardio. So currently, how I've seen the Holotile, it reminded me on the Nanoleafs of these nice toys that are just on your wall and flash up in different colors. It's something for gamers. It's something for people who can spend money to game here, that have a stationary, not a mobile use case. In healthcare, it would need something a little bit more. There are different use cases. You need to secure your patients. They need to have the handles if it's for any kind of rehab therapy and so on. So something slightly different. And again, remember what I've said at the beginning. If you need a dedicated infrastructure for your experience, if you need gloves, if you need a Tesla suit, if you need yada yada, so dress up for 30 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, people will not use it. It's a nice thing.
I tend to disagree here. I tend to disagree because first, everybody will be able to moonwalk, which is a great thing. Second, yeah, this is, I could see the avatar going. And then second, I think in rehab, what is in the medical sphere and in the simulation space, right? What is important is data, and the data that you can actually gather from this mat, because at the end it's tiles, but it's like a mat, I guess could be really interesting. And also for the LBE, all kinds of LBE, and then you don't need to switch or prepare the room. It's there, it's part of the room, you just turn it on. I don't know, Kevin, you had something to say, sorry.
So first of all, I saw the video and I was like, how the hell is that working? And there's not a lot of technical details on it, but it is very clever. I thought it was kind of a CGI thing first, right? But whatever. So it is very clever. And Rob, I'm guessing it's quite expensive. There's probably a lot of cool stuff under covers. Look, to Jay's point, and Jay, you're right. If I want to train running up and down a mountain, or even playing I'm playing Fortnite and I'm jumping over things or whatever, it's a flat surface. So how do you get around that? But I suppose we often kind of go, oh, well, it's not perfect, so it's no good. It's like perfect takes a while longer. But to my point, there is definitely use cases, and I think you have to build a use case with that in mind in terms of flat ground, moving around. So I'm guessing Disney, entertainment, attractions or something, 20 quid a pop, whatever. So fine, they'll do that. I hadn't thought of the medical one, but some types of physiotherapy, recovering from strokes and whatever, I'm sure there's use cases there. I hadn't thought of that, and that would be a very good use. Enterprise, Rob, again, it'll depend on, today you're teleporting around. So if you can kind of walk around with this easier or whatever, there's got to be use cases there. And, Jade, I get it. So again, at CES, I got to try out various haptic gloves and whatever. And from the small B-haptic stuff to Sense Glove to haptics, the ones with the big air pressure. And again, they're all different. It's apples and oranges when you try and compare them. There's a couple of other companies there with nerve. They'll trick your hands into thinking that you're pressing something. So all this kind of stuff is coming. And, the Vision Pro, it seems to have some of the best low latency, allegedly, in terms of reaction to you using your fingers in midair or whatever, because of all the sensors, 2 chips, blah, blah, blah. Great technology. But there are some use cases where I actually want to feel something to say that I've touched the button. The Haptic X gloves, they use air pressure and whatever. I physically couldn't push my finger through the top of a VR roof. It stopped my hand. Now, is that for everybody? No, but you could think of certain use cases where it's valid. But it's not that we'll all have them in every home. But anyway, the Holotile, incredible piece of technology. And just the art of the possible, right? So it's like, who else will be saying, I wonder if we could do it cheaper or different or whatever. Put steps in it. So fascinating.
I guess they are really fascinating. I guess they are more or less tailored as a new experience for Disney parks. This was the immediate first thing that I've seen. Okay, they've done something, announced it, but it's more or less designed for their own business.
Who knows? But what do you call it? I'm sure someone in there is going, we could make money out of this somewhere else, right?
I think an important note there as well, alongside the people who create these use cases, we should be championing these individuals, supporting these groups, because it only takes one innovative thinker or thinkers to really make a new use case. Maybe it's not something that any of us think about, but someone could find their target use case, and that's only ever going to grow. And Kevin, also to your point, these devices aren't perfect, nor will they be perfect. We're still waiting for video conferencing to be perfect. It isn't quite there yet, really, is it? So it's never going to be perfect, and the use cases will emerge with those thoughtful thinkers. But Kevin, could you also kick us off for our final discussion point, talking about big companies joining into the XR device marketplace? I am highly anticipating Samsung's headset announcement. They've had something in the past. They had a headset, in the past that maybe didn't kick off the way they wanted to. But there's rumours that there's a new Samsung device upcoming, and Twitter leaks too, if you are looking on there. And LG are also rumoured, or they've announced they're coming out with an XR device at the end of the year, perhaps observing this current spatial computing trend. However, within that, there's so many XR devices coming out. Kevin, do you think it's going to be a diluted market? Do you think that's going to negatively affect the market at all? Or is it really just going to be a positive to have so much competition, so much choice?
Yes, and yes. and what I mean by that is, I think we're still trying to figure out what we mean by XR market. Extended reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, something else reality, spatial computing, immersive experience, digital twin, metaverse, whatever. And in my opinion, we are going to end up with an awful lot of products. And different products will do different things. And we will have segments. There'll be glasses that'll do this. There'll be a headset that does that. There'll be haptic gloves that do something, a bodysuit that does this, treadmills or something that does that. And depending on how you rack and stack them, combine them, you'll get different use cases for the Ready Player One gamer to training the US military. And they're using HoloLens already, right? And their next thing. So to be quite honest, I see what's on Twitter and whatever. I don't know what LG or Samsung will or will not announce. I had the Samsung, you put your phone into the headset years ago and you had VR, right? And if you kind of go, well, what do you mean by an XR device? And is it just making the screens or the lenses or the cameras? LG, Samsung, given their companies, like they're all over this stuff. Look at the cameras on the Samsung, on the iPhone now. The lens capability with software to create a spatial video or a 3D video or whatever. Now, one thing I did see from Samsung in their booth was they had a 3D monitor. Now, Leia is a company that most people will know. There's others, Magnetic 3D or whatever. So think a normal monitor, but it's got a camera looking at you, so it's focused on your eyes, and it gives you the perception that what you're looking at has spatial depth, a 3D image. Samsung were demoing 3 models. It's an unannounced product, but it was public. You didn't have to sign anything to go see it. So do Samsung have an extended reality device coming? Yep, it's a monitor, a 3D monitor. So and again, a lot of people might never wear a headset, regardless of whether they have contact lenses or whatever. But if I can have a digital twin in industry today and I get a bit more depth perception with a different type of monitor, there's a valid use case there, and it's a couple of grand. And I don't need any extra ecosystem, right? The software does it all for me. So do I see all these guys getting into this market? Absolutely. It's just the next wave of digitalization, right? But I do think we'll confuse a lot of people, because today spatial computing, like Apple, you gotta hand it to them, right? You can't use the word VR, AR, XR, digital twin in any of the listing a program for the App Store. You have to say spatial computing. So look, they're good, and everyone else does the same, right? You now have virtual twins, now digital twins, and whatever. Marketing's a wonderful thing. So there is a danger that we'll have fragmented, and the average person will be going, hang on a second, this is a bit chaotic. But I don't know what's going to change. But we'll see more products, not less.
Yeah, I'm really curious about the computer vision developments first for all for all the headsets, because and also I'm very interested in everything event based cameras and sensors. And that might be, and also because I was in Seoul and I spent quite a time there visiting research institutions and big industrial players. They're so big in virtual production, and in screens. And what you're saying, and I'm actually, what I heard there is that they weren't building a headset. But what will that be? And that's where I tend to align with Kevin. It might be something different, but using their flexibility and their great knowledge of the screen technology.
The thing is, we need to start thinking about this industry from a more holistic point of view. Not about, oh, these are VR glasses, AR glasses, holographic monitors, yada, yada, yada. As you said, Samsung, LG, as well Sony, they have a huge experience in building monitors. So it's natural that they start building as well some kind of a different device. Sony has one, Samsung of course supports this as well. So beside of what you wear, where you look at, one of the core goals of companies is to get direct access to customers, to the people. A monitor is something that stands around. You don't carry it with you. If it's in an iPad, if it's in a whatever. But the nearest place to the customer is in some kind of device that you wear. How invisible it is. Then becomes spatial computing. A new touch. It's not just the spatial that you see as customer, but as well the spatial informations that these devices can lock onto you. So all of these companies, tech companies, understand the value of data. This is the one thing that we need to understand. During the IAA mobility in last year, LG had a huge presentation of their vision of a vehicle with an embedded digital cave. A digital cave is a bunch of monitors in a self-driving device. It can be as well something that you have in your room, that you carry with you, that you have on you. So here, the strategy from these companies that understand that we are visually oriented beings and they can simply give us the visual, is important to understand that their technology is just the connectivity, the visual connectivity, us towards the data. And it doesn't matter if it's VR, MR, AR, LALAR, whatever.
Can I just make one quick point? Did any of you see the transparent TV that Samsung brought out? And everyone was going, here's the fire and the thing. All I could think of looking at it was that's an augmented reality display. Right? I could throw up any digital twin and that and spin it around, and it's not stuck to my head, but I'm looking at it. So look, I don't know where this is all headed, and if I did, I'd be gone and made billions already. But I think we're just starting to scratch the surface here.
And now imagine having these devices built in where it doesn't matter if you have VR, MixR, whatever. When you need the full experience, you will just get a black shaped glasses immediately, not transparent, otherwise it turns into transparent. So simply one pair of glasses for any kind of occasion. This is one of the things where I had to think about.
It's fascinating, and I think Rob, you mentioned Letitia, everybody, but there's so many moving pieces, and what I mean is that, like, we look at what we now have with, say, the Quest 3 with the Vision Pro, and you go, what an incredible piece of technology, and they're self-contained. They do the compute, the graphics, everything on the headset, and the battery size then, but you have limitations. You have someone like Varo, who's like got incredible graphics. You plug it into a computer with a cable, so you fix all the compute power that can be in the thing. You go with NVIDIA, they'll do all the rendering in the cloud for you. So there's so many moving pieces. So maybe the technology we're wearing in the future is simply focused on display and comms. There's no compute there. The compute's done somewhere else. Different paradigm, need connectivity, security, yeah. But all I'm saying is that we're going to see more diverse devices because they're going to come at problems from different ways.
Thank you. A dematerialization of the technology itself, where it really becomes wearable, when one of the first things that will disappear from our smartphones is the display. They are so big because of the display. The camera is the next. You will just wear your pin that knows what kind of pictures you want to take, and it will make it, and you just then recap it. So the smartphone of the future might be just a small thumb drive that you carry on your belt or in the pocket. You have your personal area network that connects with all your other gadgets. Maybe sooner or later we will see just a transparent dump display and your smartphone as a service.
Fantastic, and I like this. I love this conversation because really the idea of XR devices beyond head-mounted products, that's a whole nother conversation I'm sure we could have for hours, really. You know, I was lucky enough to get hands on with the XR monitors at IGS last year, as well as what Sony's do with their virtual production studios. I've been lucky enough to be hands on at Pinewood and at the cinematography events last year too. Very fascinating stuff, and it's a whole nother use case. And really, as you say, Kevin, the best way to find out about these devices are through events. This month, for example, we've got Enterprise Metaverse Expo coming up, and then MWC Barcelona very soon after that. And really, I'll be interested to hear, Kevin, your perspective, and perhaps Rob, yours as well, about really building an XR community too. But Kevin, could you tell us a little bit more, just very briefly, about the positives of talking to these members of the XR community in events, and then also seeing this hardware and software firsthand and seeing those developments. And perhaps Rob, you can chat a little bit more about our XR community project too.
Well, for folks that know me, I'm a big believer. I have two sayings, right? I don't know what I don't know. So if I walk around in a show, I'll come across things I've never even heard of or knew existed. So it's kind of, oh God, I didn't even know what the hell is that. So it's hard to do that on a web screen, right? You can do searches and whatever. It's like opening a newspaper. You find things you don't expect. So being at a show, I'm a big believer in you just find things that whatever. You'll also meet people you've never met before, and they may have a completely different perspective. Look, we were just on this call. Letitia brought up the whole thing about Holotile in healthcare. You know, I claim I'm a smart guy, but it never dawned on me, right? It was like, God, yeah. So that's just that serendipity that none of us have all the answers, and it's just mix and match, and you see the different technologies and you kind of go things. So in terms of a community, the more we can get more people involved, more diverse opinions, different, pick a diversity angle, and you need something from every side, industry, race, religion, color, you name it, right? Because everyone's got different opinions, and this is very personal. Because it's about our reality and immersive experiences. So the more we can figure out what other people are up to or what's going on in Africa, the better, right? But just going to shows, chatting with people, it's we have so much virtual meetings and Zoom and you name it, and you can do VR meetings now in Zoom and Teams and but you still can't beat the kind of sitting down over a coffee or a beer and what the hell are you doing and why are you doing it that way, and just swapping ideas.
Absolutely. Well, Rory mentioned community. I just wanted to provide everyone with a shameless plug for a new community that we are launching in February. It is a LinkedIn community group. It's not just a group that's going to be full of news. It is a group for collaboration within the XR community. So we're really pleased to launch it. We're going to be creating lots of opportunities to get stuck into conversation on all these hot topics, and also some opportunities to get involved in XR today more and more across 2024. And do look out, we've got a whole new XR Awards ceremony coming up, and later on in the year we're going to have XR Leaders, which is brand new for 2024, and it's all about recognising the great people in this industry. So looking forward to that. Rory, it's over to you.
Thank you so much for that, Rob. Yes, brilliant. Cheers. Thanks so much for that. I think it's exciting times, really, and there's never enough minutes for these calls, but I shall let everyone go because it's been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure we'll have another one this time next month. I've been joined by Kevin O'Donovan, Rob Scott, Jay Letter, and Letitia Boham. Thank you so much for taking part in this conversation today, and I hope our readers and listeners have learned something. Thank you very much, and take care, guys.